Hello everyone, my name is Ace the Ocarina Maker, and today I am going to show you how to set up your GameCube controller on Steam the correct way. What I mean by correct way is like every other tutorial wrong? Well, no. I mean, like, if you follow the other tutorials, you'll get your GameCube controller set up and it'll do controller things, but there's a lot of wasted potential there. See, remember how the GameCube controller has these analog triggers that also have like a tactile click to them? I'm sure you guys remember playing like Mario Sunshine and knowing that when you click it all the way in, it plants your feet and does a more powerful attack with FLUDD. Well, that tactile click is not actually just like, you know, some bit of feedback for reaching the end of the trigger's travel. No, inside this controller, those clicks that you're feeling are actually buttons that are completely separate from the triggers themselves. And those, in every tutorial I've ever seen and every adapter's default bindings, remain unbound. But not only can Steam see them, but you can bind them to whatever the hell you want and have it set up as like a 2-in-1 action for certain games. If you don't like it, you can just take those buttons and turn them off. There's plenty of buttons that this thing doesn't have that it could be bound to. It doesn't have clickable sticks, it doesn't have select and home. What I prefer to do is I like binding these to the shoulder buttons and then just having Z be select. You can bind these to whatever you want, but I found that the shoulder buttons make the most sense and work with the most games. You'd actually be surprised how many games you can get away with having a button inside a trigger. Some to great benefit like grip, and others, just some weird animation quirks like Deep Rock Galactic. It will get in the way with other games, of course. You're literally needing to press in the trigger to hit the shoulder button, and some rebinding or just disabling them may be required, but if you have to disable these internal buttons, you're no worse off than you were when you were using the stock bindings of the adapter or following the other tutorials. Basically, you have the potential to have 2 extra buttons in here that no one's freaking talking about. And I'm gonna show you how to set that up. And it should be really easy. And it was at one point, and then the Steam Deck happened. And Steam Input 2.0, and nothing is freaking working, and we can't even import the bindings, and there's a lot we're gonna get into. But TLDR, you should just be able to import the bindings that I made from a clipboard and just paste them in. And then you don't have to go through all of this stuff. But that's not working at all. And before anyone says, oh, it's just a Windows problem, look, I'm on a Linux computer right here. I swear, despite how it looks, this is Linux. I've got the Steam bindings right here. I know, don't worry. This thing will be in a video on its own. You guys should subscribe for that. Come on. Ah, see? There, we got the Steam bindings right here. And now, just to confirm. Yep. Here's the trigger. No shoulder button. Okay, so we're gonna set up Steam devices, and we're gonna paste from clipboard. And we're gonna paste from clipboard. And we're gonna paste from fucking clipboard. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It doesn't matter what OS you're on, it's just Steam. It's also not just the GameCube controller, because these two have the exact same problem. Matter of fact, this one crashes Steam when you set up the bindings. Like, fully. I don't even know. So, what we're going to have to do is we are going to have to do this the extremely hard and stupid way because of the dumbass way that Steam decided to set up how you rebind your controllers. This is not going to be an issue on anything but Steam. I haven't had an issue with any emulator, any other launcher, any other game. They can see these buttons and bind them fine. The problem with Steam, though, is you can't choose the order, and Steam's not intelligent enough to know that you've already bound this, so when you go to press the L and R internal buttons, you're triggering, well, the trigger as well, and Steam will try to bind that instead. Can you try and hold the triggers down and then, you know, click them and then bind the triggers? No, because then it will feel the backwards motion and bind the trigger backwards, so that pulling it out is pressing it in, and this is zeroing it out. Which means, until Steam can fix the clipboard issue, we are going to have to bind these manually without these in the way. Apologies for the grainy footage and the 4:3 aspect ratio. I have to use my webcam right now because my phone died, and the only 2 video cameras I have that still work are just not up to the task. Oh, I don't know, that other one looks pretty professional. Why isn't that one up to the... Yeah, that would do it.
You know, unless you guys are cool with this kind of video quality the whole time. Oh god, that is crispy. Do you even see the screw holes on the back? Oh, you can kind of see them on the back. Problem is, full time is going to be only 15 seconds given that it's a floppy disk.
And that is it. So you'll have to bear with me. Now, the few things that we need today is obviously an actual GameCube controller, an adapter. I recommend the Mayflash adapter, as this is the one that I'm using and can confirm that it works very well for what we're intending to do. And we're going to need a Y-type screwdriver. I'm not kidding. We have to actually get inside of this thing. Don't blame me, man. Blame Steam for having the stupidest UI I've ever had the displeasure of using for setting up a controller. Now, thankfully, the disassembly is not so bad. And there's 2 more screws up here. Oh yeah, and cutting back to this cam for a second, if you're using a Wavebird, there are 2 extra screws, don't forget about these. And I think it goes without saying that make sure the batteries are not in the controller when you're disassembling it. Now, after removing these 6 screws, thankfully, we do not need a plastic sprying tool. It just comes right off, just like that. Now comes the actually stressful part. What we're going to need to do first is, you see these little buttons here? These are pressed in when the trigger is all the way pressed in, and they press against these circuits back here. And that is your shoulder button. These little analog dimmer switch looking things, these slides, are your triggers. So this grabs onto that like dimmer switch looking thing and pulls it around for analog, and then when you click all the way in, you're literally just pushing this membrane to press a button. So they're not actually connected like on the board to each other. Their connection is literally just this piece of plastic doing 2 actions at once. So to actually be able to press this, well, we're going to need to push one of these in, and with our fingernail get underneath that, and we're going to peel one of these out. Don't worry, it's just rubber, you're not gonna hurt it. That way, we can hold it against the little circuit here, and boop, we can press the button independently of the analog trigger. I know, I can already hear what you guys are about to comment. This is actually how you have to do it with how Valve has broken their shit. This is not a problem on anything else. This is just Steam. We gotta do this for Steam's sake. Oh yeah, by the way, before we get into the controller binding, let's also remember that these are not often in the right order, and they don't actually say which player they are by default. I rename those so I'll remember which one it is. So on your end, you're probably just going to see like 4 identical controllers, and you're going to have to test the inputs to find which one is player 1. And then which one is player 2 and 3 and 4, you know, which controller corresponds to which ports. And you'll have to rename them. Not here, because this also doesn't work. No, once you figure it out, you're gonna want to open Big Picture. And in Big Picture mode, you can actually open up the menu just by hitting the B button. We're gonna go into Settings, Controller, and then selecting it with a controller will then allow you to rename it with a keyboard. Hello. Now, If this isn't working, you might have to restart Steam. And sometimes after you name a controller, it might crash Steam to desktop. Or it just won't save. For no reason. It will eventually, but you might have to try a couple dozen times, and you'll have it. Oh, and before any armchair troubleshooters mention this is not actually Windows 7. This is Windows 10. It's using a Windows 7 skin. Ew, was that their AI? Did that shit reinstall itself? Ah! We've got the controller plugged in. We've got our little nub. And just to move one of the sticks, I also have to put pressure here. Put some pressure on the board because there's nothing holding it in. You don't want to have all the buttons fly out like I said. Yeah, this is the right input. I can see the stick. Careful with the rumble motor here, though. This is held on with friction and a dream, and the only thing connecting it is, well, these solder joints and this little plastic. The Z button here, it likes to escape. It's a little spring-loaded thing. You might just want to take that out and just hold on to that for later, because we can still press the Z button with this little switch right here. Now, try to hold the board in place and not dump all of the buttons everywhere, because we're going to need to keep the controller in this state. Make sure that these slides are actually all the way up before you start this input. They might have gotten bumped when you were taking it apart. If we have to turn it upside down, you can also kind of hold it in by the rumble motor here, if you actually need that pressure. It's not really going to work for the C-stick, though. You'll still have to put some back pressure on that because it's a different board, and it's kind of loose in there, as you can see. We're going to attempt to set up the Steam input devices now with the inner buttons as the shoulder buttons and Z as select. If the inputs misregister, don't worry. That's normal. You just have to press and release the button a bit faster and start over every single time Valve messes it up. Welcome to Steam! I love this! Anyway, let's set up the input devices, because copy to clipboard and input from clipboard are not working. So, it thinks it's a PlayStation controller, given that the cross button that it's asking for is going to be A, the circle button is going to be B, square is X, triangle is Y. Now the hard part. I'm gonna put some pressure back here. GameCube D-pads are already not great, and with how likely Steam is to miss input, we're gonna try this a couple times probably. Left. And there it goes. I only pressed left. But as you can see, it freaked out. And just to show again that it's not the controller, only left. That's just Steam device inputs. So, back at it again. A, B, X, Y. Gonna press left. Okay. Right. Yeah. Up. I'm gonna press that a little light. Up. Okay, there we go. Down. Thank God. Now let's do the sticks. Make sure you've got some good pressure on this, because you want the stick to go all the way to the gate. Because you want the range to be consistent. Now, we don't have L3 or R3, so we're just gonna skip that. So, same thing, but with good pressure beneath it, right? All the way left, all the way right, all the way up, and all the way down. The gates on the GameCube controller make this very easy. We're going to skip that again. Now, the fun part, L and R. We're going to carefully, without pressing any buttons, rotate this upside down. We're going to take this little nub that we took, and we're going to press it against this circuit board here. The right one, because it's upside down. So this is actually left. So there we go. Now, for left trigger, we want to grab this little slide, and we want to pull it all the way down and back up. Otherwise, it's going to invert the input. So it'll always be pressed unless you press it down. You don't want that. So with your finger, delicately take this little slide and bring it all the way down and all the way up. Same thing on the right side, which in this case is going to be the left. Going to take this and we're going to press there. I'm gonna take this slide and bring it all the way down and then all the way back up. Now it wants us to do back and share. We're going to use the Z button for that. I put this back in, but you can also just press the little clickable button with your thumb there. So we're just gonna hit Z. We wanna hit start, and I know that that's in the middle of the controller here, so when I'm rotating it over, I'm just gonna hit start. We don't have a home button on this controller, so I'm gonna feel around for the A button, which is the big giant one. This makes it really easy, thankfully. I'm gonna skip that. We also don't have share. I'm gonna skip that, and that should complete the inputs. Now, we should be able to move the little slides, and that's our analog trigger. That looks good. That looks good. Let's take this little nub and try and line it up here. Was it even registering? Oh dear. Did it just forget the devices that we just set up?
Yes.
I love Steam! I love Steam, Charlie! I love Steam! Okay. Yep. Alright. Set up device inputs and hope this frickin' works this time. A, B, X, Y. Left, right, up, down. And it misregistered. Okay, we're gonna start this again. Down. And it misregistered again. Up. I'm barely gonna touch it. Down. Okay, I was quick enough that time. Please, let's take the nub and see if it remembered. It did this time. Cool. How about the other side? Yeah, that works. Anyway, now that we have the input set up correctly, I'm gonna copy this to clipboard real quick. And I know this doesn't work, but in case it ever does again, just for sanity's sake, I'm gonna go ahead and put this in Notepad. I'll put this at the bottom of the description. That way, if they ever fix it, you guys don't have to go through this, because this is horrible. I hate this. Now, as for getting this button back in there, don't worry, you don't have to actually disassemble this part. You don't want to anyway. This thing is spring-loaded and likes to send the spring across the room to God knows where. So don't worry about that. There are these little hooks here that hook into these little indents. The camera's not really focusing to pick that up, so I might take some pictures with that floppy camera you saw earlier and show you what I'm talking about. But what I like to do to get that back in is line up the indent with the first hook nearest to the edge of the shell here. And just kind of like set that in there. And then we can literally just take our fingernail and push it around. We have to wiggle it to get it set up right. But the indent should line up with these two little plastic hooks here. And it should not come out or really move all that much more than this when you press it in. So you don't need to take this apart. You don't want to anyway, it's gonna be an issue. If you do have to, just remember that it is using a Phillips screw inside the controller, not the Y screws from the rest of it, and it's gonna be a smaller size. Don't strip those screws. Now, as we put the shell back on, a couple things to look out for. Make sure the slides are all the way in the up position. Make sure that this board is setting in here right around this peg so that it's not moving. Make sure that your wire is properly wrapped around this peg here, and make sure that the zip tie, yes, that's stock, that's actually from the factory, make sure the zip tie is sitting in the shell's cutout for it. Everything should feel like it's not moving anywhere. Then we can just take the shell, and it should go back on, but you might have to wiggle it a little bit. There we go. Now that you've got the thing back together, what you're going to notice when you test the device inputs is that the left and right triggers, well, they're not zeroing out. And that is because these plastic housings don't actually go all the way up versus how far the slide can travel. For some reason, Steam just won't register the input unless it zeroes out, which means when you put the shell back on, yes, there's gonna be about like 2,000 to 3,000 of like dead zone there that's actually being pressed. It's okay. This is low enough that almost every game is not going to register it, but we can fix that if you want it to actually be zeroed out in the settings of the games we're going to be setting this up for, because we are not done yet. See, the problem with what we did isn't just not being able to pull it out all the way and zeroing it out. The problem is you're not going to be able to reach your full analog pull unless you're also holding down the shoulder button, and you don't want that. You want the dead zone set so that this thing reaches max as you press into the button, and then you can click. So that the rest of that input, the rest of that travel is dead and dedicated only to pressing that button. So, as an example, we are going to configure this for grip, wherever the heck that might be. There it is. We don't really need to change the way any of these are bound. That's what we just literally did. But what we do need to do is go into the triggers, and we're gonna set the dead zone here. Why aren't we setting the dead zone just universally on the controller? Well, Steam doesn't let you, so you're gonna be doing this for every single individual game. Thanks, Steam. Anyway, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to make note of when we press this down and we can start feeling the resistance of that button, wiggle it around a little bit, and write down whatever the smallest number is. So we're gonna remember 23795 on the left trigger, for example, and we are going to go into our game settings. So here we have grip. We're going to go into the controller settings. We're gonna select controller 1, make sure Steam input's enabled, edit layout, triggers, and then here on analog output, we are going to go to trigger range end, and we are gonna put in whatever that lowest number was. For me, it was 23795, and that is going to set the end range of the trigger. So, pressing it down like this will press it all the way. Now, trigger range start, we can do the same thing for. We can see what it's showing us if you want to zero it out. So, oh, I guess it won't let me have both these windows open at once. Oh, that's fun. So here it's kind of resting at well, about just under 3,000. We'll do 3,000 to be safe. So that will zero it out, so the dead zone has it set at 0 when it's pulled all the way back, and then the trigger range end, the number that we put in, is going to make it so that, why did that number change? Oh, I clicked right trigger settings instead of left. Wait. Why is right first? Why is right first? Anyway, on left now, we're gonna put it around 3,000. You could enter 3,000 exactly manually if you wanted to, but I think that would be good enough. So now that we've set the trigger range start and trigger range end, it's not going to have any input as it sits here. And then right before the button starts getting pressed in, when we feel that resistance, it's going to be full pull. Otherwise, if we don't do this, we're not going to be able to reach full analog pull, which means the car is going to actually be slower, unless we are currently holding down what we've set up as the shoulder buttons. If you have like multiple GameCube controllers, you're gonna want to set that for whichever controller is the biggest problem controller. So, might be a good idea, instead of 3,000, to just overshoot a little bit. Now don't worry about making these dead zones too big, because the GameCube controller has a lot of travel. You're not gonna be missing out. I hope you guys see now, my regular audience, what a absolute shit show trying to set up controllers is on Steam. But now that we've set that up, and I'm gonna probably leave that about around 3,000, let's go ahead and see how it does. So in this game in particular, I did do some different bindings so that pressing R is accelerate, clicking it in is boost, pressing in L is brake, clicking it in is handbrake, that is so natural, and then the left and right weapons are actually Y and X, which would normally be boost and handbrake. What this does is incredible. Not only is it an easier motion, but let's say you're just about to finish in second, but you can just maybe pull ahead in first. You ever do this like mental thing where you squeeze the trigger tighter, even though that's not actually going to do anything? This time, it does. Because squeezing the trigger in and making it click will activate the boost if you have it. Now, this game though, what Steam should be doing, see, this switches between the cars, and the bumpers switch between the paint. So I'm changing to the paint and the car at the same time. Well, if you go ahead and hold both the triggers in, and just keep them held in like that, bumper, bumper. Look at this. It knows I'm just hitting the bumpers. So I just keep these pressed in while I want to scroll through this, and then when I want to scroll through the car, I just do a bigger motion. See? This is absolutely 100% usable. But yeah, that was a nightmare. So, when we did it today, it actually did do that for all of this device's inputs. Thank goodness we only have to do that once. It could be nunts though, Valve, if you want to fix that clipboard thing. But here's an idea. How about just redo this whole stupid UI? This sucks. Let me, with my mouse, reach in and click which button I want to set up. Something like that. And also, while we're at it, how the hell is this UI laggy? Are those even vector lines or are they a set resolution? Good lord. I hope you guys appreciate this. If this was helpful, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Hell, hit the notification bell, turn notifications to all, check out the other content, or just leave a very nice comment. You don't have to do all that. But yeah, thanks for watching this absolute nightmare.